I'm here with Jason Singer. We got connected through Tim Kaufman and has a great story. And Jason, thanks so much for the time. And maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
My name's Jason. I'm 30 years old. I live in York, Pennsylvania, which is about 40 minutes south of the capital, Harrisburg, and currently working on personal training and my musicianship.
Okay, awesome. And I think I saw somewhere that you weighed a bit more. What was your top weight?
373 pounds.
Okay, yeah, you look like a far cry from that now.
Yep, almost 200 pounds.
Almost 200 pounds lost. Wow, it's incredible. Were you big when you were younger, or what was kind of your trajectory in terms of weight gain and whatnot?
Yeah, okay, so basically in first grade, I was diagnosed with ADD and was put on it was Ritalin at the time. Now it's Adderall, but basically legal methamphetamine. So I didn't really have an appetite. Most of my childhood, I remember kind of eating a small lunch and maybe a dinner as well, just because my mom would cook. So it was like the whole if I slaved over the stove all day, you need to eat sort of thing. So when I graduated high school, well, I spent my whole life fairly thin. I mean, I was never overweight, never chunky, but I wasn't like lean. And then when I graduated high school, I went off the pill and I would say 60 pounds, put on 60 pounds within the first year. And that was in 2004. And then in 2006, I broke my ankle, which required surgery, plate, and 5 pins. And that at that point, I was immobile for about 4 months. So that kind of like fueled the food addiction, the whole me going from kind of the weight that I gained from high school to then really gaining a lot of weight. And at this point, it was hard to reverse as far as like the appetite and wanting to keep eating and eating and eating.
You mentioned to me in a message of 13 years where you were on Ritalin. Did you just not have much of an appetite then, or were you a super active kid, or
I was about as active as the average kid. I know I skated when I was 13, skateboarded a little bit when I was 13. I was into soccer. Wasn't really much into organized sports, but I was active. I was into like BMX and stuff like that. But as a result of the pill, I just did not have an appetite. And I would argue that most people that are on those type of amphetamines will tell you that they don't have much of an appetite either. So yeah, I attribute it to not being on the medication and my body craving everything that it had been deprived of for 13 years. I mean, of course I was eating. How else would I have stayed alive? But it wasn't the 3 meals a day. It wasn't anywhere near 2,000 calories a day. Nothing.
And do you remember distinctively, like in the days and weeks following getting off of Ritalin, like how your body or your mind was different?
I don't. I mean, everything kind of just seemed. I never really pegged myself as someone who had symptoms of ADD to begin with because I had been put on the medication so early. I never knew myself off the medication. So by the time 13 years passed and I went off of the medication, I just felt like the same person as far as my level of focus. The only thing that was different is I have an appetite now.
Yeah. And so then what did that appetite develop into? I mean, obviously, so within a year you gained 60 pounds. Was it, did you form bad habits? Were you eating terrible stuff? Were you eating late at night? Like what kind of were, looking back?
Late is a thing, and a lot of bad foods. Like, I don't want to say that my parents didn't feed us. They didn't feed us the worst foods, but they. I mean, it was pretty standard American. So for me, it was generally bad food to begin with, but then overeating the bad food. So a lot of tasty cakes and Pop Tarts, all the stuff that sticks out to a kid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I could see how, going from not having an appetite to really like feeling like eating a Pop Tart could seem like the best idea in the entire world to a kid.
world.
or
Donuts. Ah!
or just a box of Pop Tarts.
Yep.
So you broke your ankle 2006. You went from 190 to 260 in 4 months. Were you kind of aware of what was going on at the time?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, we were a little less politically correct, so making fun of the fat kid was pretty normal, I guess, growing up. So, like, we all knew generally that we shouldn't be overweight, that there's something intrinsically unhealthy about being fat or overweight or whatever term that you decide to use. And I knew, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's happening? But the sugars and the synthetic foods are so powerful that it's just like any other addiction. You're drinking the chocolate milk while at the same time saying I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. So yeah, I was absolutely aware of the problem right from the gate, but it was just impossible to stop.
And do you think, I mean, I know I think you said you broke your ankle and were like immobile for 4 months. Was there some self medication coming in there? Like, was there kind of some self soothing just for the fact that, like, you were stuck in the basement and couldn't do much?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it was a lot of eating out of boredom. Kind of, you're not able to satiate your mind, so satiate your mouth kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I know at some point, you realize or you talk about how you were addicted to food, which I know for some people might be a foreign concept. Do you think some of those things, some of those addictions were kind of cemented or really started when you were stuck there for 4 months and had nothing to do but eat, or
Yeah,
was it
that's not
before that?
really suited.
And for somebody who, like obviously food is essential for us to, like you said, you wouldn't be alive if you wouldn't have eaten, when you were a kid. For somebody
Right.
though that maybe, addiction to food, even if maybe they have some symptoms or, if somebody's not familiar with that concept, how would you describe that? What is that?
Um, my best description of food addiction would be going to a gathering or a dinner party, whether it be at your family's or a friend's house, and the spread of food's out, and everyone's in line, or however you guys get your food, you're click over here, just waiting for their turn to fill their plates. And the person with food addiction is standing in the back saying, I hope by the time it's my turn to get up there that there's still brownies left. I hope that there's a piece of, when there's a million pieces of chicken and 10 people at the party, there's plenty of food there, but you're still anxiously hoping, gosh, I hope there's enough for me. That to me is like a very psychological telltale sign of like, you're not just into food, you're hooked on it. You're dependent on it, you're addicted, whatever you want to say, but you're in a bad way.
I guess kind of, if I'm hearing what you're saying, it controls you at a level that isn't necessary or healthy maybe.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, when I was living at home, oh, let's see, at I would say 19, 20, I was sneaking food to my bedroom because, you're not supposed to be fat. Everyone knows that. It's unhealthy. And when you're an addict, whether it be, and I don't know this from experience, but I would assume that whether it be, cocaine or heroin or gambling, because you know it's wrong, you're trying to hide that behavior from those that you love. So for me, it was like, even though it's just food and it might only be a pack of Pop Tarts here and there, I'm still hiding it. So yeah, it's definitely controlling your actual behavior for sure.
Yeah, when I think like probably other addictions, there's some shame involved there as well. It's like you don't want other people to know what you're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you talked about how, you felt like you were eating yourself to death. What do you mean by that?
Kind of, I guess, heart disease running. Well, heart disease doesn't run in a family, but bad lifestyle choices run in a family, which results in several cases of heart disease and heart failure. So for me, I kind of knew that if I would say by 23, I was having chest pains. I wasn't one to go to the doctor because, again, I was very embarrassed, so I didn't really want to admit to myself or anyone else how bad the problem really was. Um, when I was 27, I was told by my doctor that I should be on blood pressure medication, which I refused because I'm like, I'm 27. What do you? This must be medical mafia stuff. I can't. 27 and blood pressure medication. That's not right. So I knew. I mean, I mean, not to sound egotistical, but I'm bright. I'm not the dumbest person, and so I kind of had a good grip on what was going, like what I was doing to myself. It's just was happening so fast that I wasn't able to stop it. So I knew that if I continued at the current rate of consumption, that I was looking at an early heart attack. I knew it.
And I think you said, your biggest, you were 373. You mentioned tying on your shoes would make you red in the face and you'd break a small sweat. Were there any things that were difficult, for you looking back now? Like, what was life like being 373 pounds for somebody who just isn't familiar with that?
Well, for me, it wasn't probably as bad as it is for some people because I kind of have a big personality and I'm a class clown type of personality. So for me, I kind of dealt with it a little differently. I made fun of it a lot. A lot of stand-up routines would revolve around my weight. So it was a lot mentally. It was easier for me to accept and other people around me to accept because my personality kind of outweighed my. I mean, a lot of people that are big tend to like resort to reclusiveness and not be as social, and none of that was that way for me. I was out there. Um, but being fat, man, just different, just inactive. All that you ever think about's food, walking up and down stairs. Anytime you drop something, you're like, I'll just leave that there. I don't need that ever again in my life, ever, because I don't want to bend over and pick it up. Um, but as far as the day to day, I don't really, just like anything else, because humans are such amazing creatures, we adapt to anything. So I adapted to being fat, and being fat became normal. So it's kind of hard to put, other than the bad health that's associated with obesity. It's kind of hard to put it in a bad light because it was normal for me. Like sweating, tying my shoes, or getting out of breath coming up a flight of stairs. That was all normal for me. I knew it was a problem, but it happens year in and year out. You're like, well, okay, this is my life. You stop viewing it as bad because the more you view it as bad, the more you know you have to change. And the more you know you have to change, the more you realize, well, I have to put in work to do that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to work. I just want to continue to live my life in a leisurely way and eat all the good tasting foods that my palate likes.
And did you ever have any moments, either with yourself or other people saying like, people around you, moments of concern, or is there ever a time where you really gave a hard thought about the situation?
No. It's funny. I'm so glad you brought that up because I make this joke a lot where the whole entire time I'm gaining weight, pretty much living at home, spending a lot of time around my family. Nobody stopped and said, "Hey, Jason, we're really concerned about what's going on here." And I was, well, what do you mean? Well, you're gaining weight like 60 pounds a year. What's happening? What's going on? We should figure out a way to nip this in the bud. No one said a word. And again, I don't blame anybody. It's my choice to put the food in the mouth. No one's holding a gun to my head. But as soon as I lost weight, oh my gosh, you look sick. You look thinner every time we see you. You need to eat more. It's like, ah,
That's
totally different.
Yeah.
So
Um,
being thin in today's society is sick, and being fat is normal because 2 out of 3 people are obese. So it's very normal now. I feel.
yeah, it's weird how even it's weird how even for somebody who cares about you, all those kinds of things, like you can bring up such you know you talk about subjects that are so small at length, but really the elephants in the room, no pun intended, or oftentimes left just completely untouched. Um, I think there was a camping slash hot dog story that I noted that I wanted to ask you about. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
The hot dog story. No, not at all. Went to a float trip at my grandpa's cabin. The guys that get together and do that, they do it to float down the Juniata River and catch fish. I never fished, so would just go there to spend time with my dad and my uncles and my grandfather. And I went there a day early, which is when all the older people go, the retirees, and I went there to spend time with my grandfather. It was a Thursday, I believe, maybe a Friday, and all they had to eat were hot dogs, like the hot dogs that cook in the water, that just sit in simmering water, and then they had bags of like Cheetos, little bags of potato chips, party mix, those little snack bags, boxes of them, because there's like 25 guys that go up for this thing, and for the day that I was there, I didn't bring anything. I was only going to go there for a day. I was planning on leaving as soon as I woke up the next morning. And the day that I was there, I ate probably, I would say, at least 15 hot dogs. At least. Because now, I know it's just so funny. It seems like so many hot dogs to people when I tell this story, but when you're dealing with someone who's a food addict, who's 373 pounds, and there's nothing else to eat, 5 hot dogs for breakfast seems like not enough. I know that sounds very funny and messed up, but 5 hot dogs for breakfast, 5 hot dogs for lunch, 5 hot dogs for dinner, sprinkled with party mix and chips and Cheetos and Doritos. And like I've said before, eating what I ate for 9 years had me in the bathroom every morning pretty sick. That's something I think a lot of people that deal with food addiction and obesity don't admit. They don't even come close to talking about how's their bathroom time every morning. Because every morning we all get up and have to use the bathroom for one reason or another. And whether it be number one or number two, and I can tell you that it was like sickness. If you've ever been sick from like eating too much or eating a bad food, it was like that for me every single morning because of what I was eating. But the hot dog morning was particularly bad. It was the worst morning. Like, I woke up with the worst stomach pains. And, of course, the cabin only has an outhouse. So when I woke up early, there were guys in the outhouse. And I'm like, ah! So I got in my car, didn't say a word to anybody. I'm driving into town to use the Tom's gas station has like an Econo Lodge. And you can rent a room for $5 to take a shower. Well, I did that to use their bathroom. And on the ride home, I just kept saying, like, Tony Robbins incantations in my head. You can't do this anymore. You can't do this anymore. You can't do this anymore. This is done. This is done. You cannot be fat. You cannot. I just kept saying these things over and over an hour and 40 minutes worth of driving, of just telling myself, you're done. That's it. So that was the hot dog story.
Wow.
After that, I'm not sure what happened when I came home, if I researched how to lose weight, new ways to lose weight. Because mind you, over the 9 years of obesity, I had tried, Special K cereals and skim milk, the standard American approach to dieting and weight loss. And by way of the cosmos and the heavens, I came across the China study. And that's one piece of the story I wish I remembered, because I do not know how I came across the China study. But I read the China study, and that was it for me. 0 milligrams of cholesterol. And I said, well, what's cholesterol, and where does that come from? So I researched that and found out it only comes from animal products, which basically the book's saying, go vegan, don't eat animal products. So that was kind of like where it started for me as far as the journey that got me to where I am now.
And I think you say that June 22nd, 2014 was the day that you started changing your life. What did you do differently on that day and in the days to follow that was different from the last 9 years?
No processed food and no animal products. 600 calories a day for maybe the first 10 weeks of my weight loss, 8 weeks of my weight loss. It completely, I mean, upside down, 180-degree difference. Because once I read the China study, it all made so much sense to me, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. It's pretty cut and dry. So I wasn't somebody that needed to wean off of it. I wasn't somebody that needed to take baby steps. It was either we're in or we're out. And I hit up my friend I had at the time named Steve. He was a personal trainer and he worked at a gym. And I said, hey, do you mind if I come out and work out at that gym that you train at? And he said, yeah, as long as I'm in there, I'm training, so you can come in and work out for free. And I said, cool. So I started going to a gym, and he had made a little list of things for me to do every morning, just out of the goodness of his own heart. And I would do that every day at the gym for I was only at the gym for 5 or 6 weeks until he decided to leave that gym and open up his own gym, which he now has his own gym. But I ended up just taking my exercise routines and doing them at home and doing a lot of hiking. So my life went from TV and eating, literally, well, work, TV, eating, to every morning running, hiking, every afternoon or late evening hiking 3 to 8 miles a day, and then doing like squats, calf raises, push-ups, sit-ups, stomach crunches, leg lifts, just like 20-minute at-home things. But I did that every day, 7 days a week for 11 months, which I
And
don't think people don't believe me, I don't think, when I say that.
and were you, obviously 11 months, no breaks, requires a ton of discipline, determination, however you want to call it. Did you have that discipline before in your life that just kind of manifested itself in other areas? Or was the discipline as well kind of a new thing?
I would say arguably kind of a new thing. I was an artist a lot of my life. Like have painted some very brilliant artwork. And as far as discipline goes, that's about as disciplined as I got, like sticking with the project, seeing the project through. But that's just an artist thing. This took some serious determination, and I'm glad that you brought that up as well, because discipline's something I talk about with people now all the time, because you can't lose weight, or you can't go vegan, or you can't really do anything worth doing without a little bit of discipline. And so that's like I would say at least one of the top three ingredients to success is discipline, for sure.
I know you were 28 whenever you decided to make a change, and you said in a message to me that it was a matter of life and death. At the time that you made the change, you've eaten 15 hot dogs, you read the China study. Did you realize at that moment that it was a matter of life and death, or is it only after kind of looking in hindsight that you realize that?
More in hindsight, but my father worked with a guy named Tim Smith, who I went to school with his daughter, and I'll make this short. He coached t-ball, he coached baseball, he coached soccer. He was a pretty big figure in my life coming up through because of my dad wanting us to be in sports. And he died of a heart attack when I want to say maybe 17, 18 years old. He died of a heart attack at 40 or 41. And I remember going to my dad like, how did this happen? He was so active. He he coached and coached and coached and he golfed. He was just always doing something. And he goes, yeah, but he lived at, and then he listed all the fast food joints, McDonald's, Wendy's. He said every morning at work he'd come in with a milkshake from one of the, the Wendy's or just any one of the fast food places. The guy lived for that. So here, like for me, before the weight loss, I always had Tim in the back of my mind. He was always there all the time, knowing like, at 28, 41's not too far away. And so I kind of knew that could be me. I could end up just like Tim. I could be just as active as the next person. But if I'm eating this shitty food, I'm going right down with the rest of them. So I knew a little bit because of the Tim story motivating me, but I knew it a lot more afterwards for sure. Because like I said, once something becomes normal, you don't really look at it so much. But once I became this new person and looked back, like none of that was normal at all.
Yeah, it's amazing how we all kind of seem to have gotten new normals, which previously would have seemed almost obscene as a possibility, but now it's a normal day these days. So what as far as physical activity and whatnot now, what does that look like for you? What
For
do
me
you
now,
Yeah, what do you enjoy, or what do you do week to week,
well, I
day
mean,
to day?
I am skateboarding more than anything. That's like the best thing because it's funny. When I lost 163 pounds within 11 months, and I remember it like this. I'm out front of my apartment, and I'm like, all right, now what? My goal was 100 pounds. I hit 163, thinking, well, what can I do in my life now that's going to give me the reward that like, there's something more rewarding about discipline than anything else. And I said, I know. You used to skateboard when you were 13. Why not give that a try? So I went out and bought a skateboard. And within the first 2 weeks, I was doing all the same tricks that I was doing when I was a kid. And it was it teaches you that you have to work. You have to do, like, let's just say you're doing a kickflip. You have to try it 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 times till you can get it once. And then you get it once and you're like, all right, I got this. And you go to do it a second time and you can't do it. So for me, it was like skateboarding replaced that whole, not only the physical aspect of what I was looking for, but the discipline, the psychological aspect, the teaching me that you can't just have it because you want it. You have to work for it hard. And once you get it once, that doesn't mean you're going to get it a million times. So for me, that was the most rewarding aspect physically. And then after I started skateboarding, I lost another 30 pounds. So that's where the 193 comes from. I kind of stopped at 163 and then just skated. And over skating for maybe like 2 months, I lost an additional 30 pounds. And so I took time off from the whole idea of my body and just skated from 2015 till I would say December 2016 is when I decided I wanted to start working on my body more. I wasn't gaining any weight back on. I was actually losing a lot of weight. Was getting down, like, skateboarding is so demanding that I was getting down to like 174, and I knew, like, if you don't eat more and concern yourself with your caloric intake and you continue to do this output of activity, you're going to turn into nothing. Like, you're going to disappear. So I started working on muscle growth in December, and now my life consists of the gym every day, twice a day, most days twice a day, but at least every day, 5 a.m. to about 8 a.m. And then if it's nice out, which it hasn't been here, it's been cold, below zero. It's just been ridiculous. But it'll be skating. So, for example, once spring and summer hits, I'll go to the gym, and then I'll go straight to the skate park, skate there for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then come home and eat a meal, maybe. Maybe.
Is there anything about this whole process, whether it's emotionally, physically, socially, that surprised you looking back now from where you sit today?
What do you mean the process?
Is there anything that surprised you? Whether it's not not sweating whenever you go to tie your shoe, or the fact that you fit in certain clothes, you can do certain things, or people treat you a certain way. Like, is there anything that you just never would have thought would have been possible whenever
Yeah,
you
being
were
called
really big?
hot by girls. I know that seems very vain, but that's something that I never, ever, ever would have expected ever in my life. To even be told that I'm attractive by anybody was like an impossibility. So for me, that's new. Um, Surprised at the fact that I lost a shoe size and a half. Fat hides everywhere, brother. It's everywhere. Um, no, like I said, socially, I was pretty much always the same person. I was outgoing. I had an outgoing personality, funny, comedy. Of course, the sweating with the tying the shoes had stopped. I mean, I can't really think. Surprised maybe isn't the word. Relieved, relieved to find out that life was this easy. One thing that I was negatively surprised about is the whole time, and this may seem a bit childish, but the whole time I was obese, I'm looking out at the world and I'm like, I just want to be like them. I just want to be thin. I want to be thin like all the normal people. And this may have been like my perception maybe 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And then when I lost the weight, here I am thin like everybody else. And everybody else that I wanted to be like is now on the trajectory of what I was. So that was something that was like, it was like someone invited you to a party, but the only way you can go to the party is you got to go through an obstacle course and it has to be done by this time. And you get the obstacle course done a minute late and you're at the party and you walk in and no one's there. That's kind of how it felt for me. Like, where all the thin people go? I mean, there are, but the whole 2 out of 3 is like, it was very surprising for me to learn that while I was reversing my mistakes, a lot of the people in my life were starting theirs as far as, weight gain and bad health. So that was a little bit of a surprise for me for sure.
I know for a lot of people, myself included, when you're that big, you wonder and maybe worry, and not just the beginning but throughout the process, like, what am I going to look like when I get done with this? And I know you obviously have some level of confidence, because I think at the moment your Facebook profile picture is you without a shirt on. And so, what does that process look like throughout? Because I know that's, for a lot of people, it's a concern. It's also something that you kind of talked about, things that people don't talk about. What has that been like for you throughout this process? Also where you sit now and where you see yourself for the future, in terms of just, both from a mental perspective and a physical perspective.
Well, the reason, oh my gosh, the reason that I'm showing pictures without my shirt is because I want to show people that you don't have to have the loose skin. That if you do the weight loss, if you eat a plant-based diet and just go plant-based, right? But you have to exercise, and I feel like to lose 193 pounds and be left with as little skin as I have is a testament to the work that I did. So I mean, I guess there's a little bit of confidence there, but it's also for me just wanting to really inspire people, because I know there's a lot of people out there that might be afraid to lose weight because of how much skin they'll have left, right? Or how they'll look when they're done. And my thing is, you don't have to. You can will yourself into the body that you want by consciously thinking about it, working, isolating muscle groups. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that.
Well, and I know, just because I would hate to ask you the first question and not follow up, but whenever people, I know you do personal training and whatnot, and I'm sure you probably get the question outside of it. So when people are like, "Hey, I'm worried about this," what is your response to that as far as just on a practical level? Like you say, you've done the work. So what do you tell people like this is when, when they ask what you've done, what's kind of your response to that? Because I'm also imagining there are probably people who are maybe listening to this or watching this who, see a picture of you or, before and after and say, well, how do you do it? Is this Photoshop? Is this, whatever? Because it is a big thing for a lot of people. I have this conversation a lot. Like I said, I've had it in my own head. And also, I know because I've had conversations with other people about it that your body also kind of ebbs and flows, and sometimes you get stuck in a. It's like a haircut. Sometimes you're in a bad place with a haircut, and it's going to get better. But when you're in that bad place with it, you're kind of like, this is rough.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, my general advice at the start is to eat plants, to go
Sure.
plant-based, definitely 100%. I mean, you're not going to be able to. Actually, I had a conversation this morning with a personal trainer at the gym, who him and I have been getting close, and he eats meat, and he says the same thing. He goes, "Man, I've seen." He goes, "You'll see it," because I just started going to this gym maybe 17 weeks ago. He goes, "You'll see it. You'll see." He goes, "I've seen people come in here for the last 3-4 years and work out hard every time I see them in here, but their bodies haven't changed because they haven't changed their diet." So like a lot of people will use food as a reward. So I go to the gym, I busted my ass and I sweat, but now I get to go home and have a baked potato with butter and a T-bone steak. That's not real. That's just invalidates all the work that you just did at the gym. So that's my first piece of advice is to change your diet. Just go plant-based. And there's a lot because like when I first started on a plant-based diet, I didn't know anything. I was eating water sauteed peppers and onions over jasmine rice. I mean, I didn't know. Like the things that I make now, the curries and the vegan pizzas and the ricotta, the cashew ricotta cheeses and all the vegan wonderful plant-based foods out there. I didn't know any of that. So I was eating very minimal. So I don't want to get too far into the diet with people because that takes like finite, like this is what you need as far as omega-3s and fats and carbs. But as far as telling people what to do to lose weight and motivate them, other than my story, I mean, to me, generally, that seems to be enough. When I meet people and I tell them, there's the, like, you can almost see it in their eyes. There's this thing that lights up in the back of their head where we're all a bit egotistical and we're all a bit cocky, whether we want to admit it or not. And I feel like there's a part of us that always says, well, if he can do it, or if she can do it, or if he over there can do it, then I can do it, right? If one human can do it and you're a human too, that means you possess the ability to do that same thing. You just have to find that. So it's not really that practical because, like Joe Cross from Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead says, it's not the knowing, it's the doing. We all know that fruits and veggies are healthy, and we all know that exercise daily is the key component to health. So just do it, right?
And then, if you could go back to, and have a conversation with yourself at 373 pounds, and you could give that person some kind words, some encouragement to get yourself maybe started on the journey quicker, what would you say?
What would I say to myself? Wow. Wow. Oh, I'm so angry that I did those things to myself. It's hard for me to have any type of kind word. I would just, if I was able to even see myself, I would be so angry. That's a really tough question. That's really, really hard to answer because I don't want to give a cliche, compassionate response of, you're not alone. You can do this. You got this, buddy. It's like, for me, a lot of my journey came from ego death, realizing, well, it would have been 6 years before the weight loss. I made a pact with myself to become the best version of myself as I possibly could be, whatever that meant for me at the time. It was long before veganism, long before weight loss. And I started working on myself. In fact, I stopped drinking alcohol. It's been over 4 years now since I had a drop of alcohol, which I attribute veganism as a subsequent inevitable result of this whole idea that I want to be better. I want to be better. I want to, like, our purpose in life is progress. That's the answer to the question when someone says, what's the purpose of life? Progress. That's it. It's not that difficult. Progression is the key to happiness. So for me, as long as I'm progressing, I'm cool. But I wouldn't say that to an old self. I would say you're a scumbag. I would say your parents are lying to you. I would say your school system's lying. I mean, it would get pretty heavy. It would get to a degree where I don't think your audience would want to even hear the response. Seriously, because it's like it's deeper. It's way deeper than the semantics of what's on the surface of fats and sugars. It's way deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that. So that's another podcast.
Now you're going to be stuck for the rest of the day. I just messed up your day. You're going to be like, man, why do you have to ask me that question?
No, it's good because I want to reflect on that.
Yeah, well, I guess part of progress is realizing where you came from, where you were to a certain level.
Oh, for sure, and it's cool too because, like I told Lori Saturday, and like I tell most people that think that kind of praise some of us for losing as much weight as we did, and they think it's this amazing thing, and I say, yeah, but isn't it amazing that I gained the weight? I mean, you know how some people you've probably met in your life are intrigued by serial killers? Just they're intrigued by the psychology behind why someone would want to do something so heinous. That's how my intrigue works with the weight gain. Like, how does someone, through knowing that what they're doing is wrong, they know they're destroying their body, they can see the weight gain, they can feel their clothing not fitting as well anymore, and they continue to do it. To me, that's where the gold in the story is. How does somebody allow themselves to do that? Because naturally, we're all supposed to be lean, indigenous. So for me, it was like I never was confident or cocky or arrogant about my weight loss. I never really thought it was that big a deal because I should have been living this way the whole time anyway. But it wasn't until I listened to Tim's podcast with Howard Jacobson where Tim touched on how he was explaining what his life was before and what his life is now, and talked about his wife having to put on his socks and shoes due to weight and inflammation, and now him and his wife run marathons together. And I had to pause it because I'm like, I think it's, in that moment, I said to myself, I think it's time for you to realize what you've done. Because I didn't. I've just been living, man. Like, when I lost the weight, I just went on with my life. I started skateboarding. I started making new friends. I never stopped to realize, whoa, buddy, you did like a really big thing. Like, you lost a lot of weight and changed your life upside down for the positive. So I'm glad these things happen, the podcasts and the questions, because it does. It helps you reflect. It helps you see things from a perspective that you may have never even considered. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. I have to just keep saying that every time he sends me a message. Have you interviewed this person? Well, lastly, where can people, connect with you and find out what you have going on?
Okay, so Facebook, Jason Singer, although I do have more than one Facebook, but like you said, it'll be the picture of me with my shirt off. Um, and you can find me on Instagram. I prefer being followed on Instagram because Instagram's way cooler than Facebook, I feel. Which I post a lot of my meals there. A lot of my the food that I cook is on there. Plus my skate videos are on there. So my Instagram handle is plant-based skater, all one word, all spelled out. And Facebook, that's about it. Those are
Aw-
my only social medias.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks for the time. You're an inspiration. Thanks for sharing your story. And I'll look forward to hopefully catching up with you sometime in person. And look forward to seeing all the delicious meals on Instagram and whatnot. And hopefully talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tim Kaufman, for making this all happen. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great day.
Yep, you too.